Chapter 1. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's disappearance. The moment you erase yourself for love, you begin to disappear. I once believed that love was sacrifice, that to be truly connected, you had to give everything: your time, your space, your silence, your Sunday mornings, and your strange little rituals. So I gave. I gave up my morning walks. I gave up my slow breakfasts and solitary thoughts. I gave up entire parts of myself and called it compromise. It wasn't compromise. It was erosion. A slow disappearance disguised as devotion. We met in spring, one of those fall springs where the sun appears without warmth. She walked like she carried light, and I followed it. I loved the way she noticed things, how she paused at the sound of birds, how she placed her coffee cup just so. And I thought, if I love her well enough, if I make room for her in every corner of my life, that will be enough. So I started shrinking, quietly, lovingly. At first it felt generous. She liked talking in the morning, so I stopped reading the paper. She felt uneasy when I spent too much time alone, so I canceled my solo hikes. She needed space in our shared home, so I folded my dreams into smaller shapes. And I thought, this is what love is: fitting together, making room, becoming something together. But no one told me that if you bend too far, you don't spring back, you break. One afternoon, I sat in our kitchen, drinking her kind of tea, her favorite flavor, her preferred temperature, her schedule, and I realized I hadn't chosen anything in weeks. Not what I wore, not what I watched, not how I moved through a single day. I had confused surrender with connection, and in doing so, I had erased myself. We never fought about it. There were no ultimatums, no tears, just the gentle fog of vanishing. She loved me, but she loved the version of me who was always agreeable, always available, always willing to disappear, and I let her, because I thought that's what love required. But love without boundaries is not intimacy, it's consumption. When one person disappears to maintain the connection, it is not love holding them together, it is fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being too much, fear of drawing a line and being left behind it. After the divorce, I started doing things alone again. Simple things: eating breakfast in silence, spending an entire Saturday reading, buying books I'd forgotten I once loved. At first, I felt guilty, like I was cheating on someone who no longer existed. But then slowly, it began to feel like coming home, to myself. Now I know boundaries are not walls. They are doors with doorknobs on both sides. They allow entrance. They allow protection. They make room for two full people to meet, not just overlap. I still believe in love, but now I understand. Love that requires the death of self is not sacred. It's survival. And I don't want to survive in love. I want to be seen, heard, held, without disappearing. Voiceover style closing. You can't love fully if you vanish in the process. Real love doesn't erase you. It expands you. Chapter 2. Communication isn't everything, but disconnection is. There was a time when I believed that if two people kept talking, they'd be okay. I clung to the idea like it was a life raft, that as long as there were words, there was hope. And so we talked. God, did we talk. We talked about what the kids needed for school. We talked about grocery lists, mortgage payments, dinner plans. We talked about upcoming holidays, car maintenance, her work trip, my cousin's wedding. We filled the house with conversations, like padding on the walls of a cell, but somehow every word built distance rather than closeness. We never talked about what mattered. And worse, we stopped noticing that we weren't. Disconnection is subtle. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It slips in during Tuesday dinners, when silence lingers 2 seconds too long. It grows in the unsaid things. The way I didn't tell her I was drowning in work stress. The way she didn't tell me she felt unseen. It settles into routines. You kiss goodbye, but only because you always have. You ask, "How was your day?" but don't really listen to the answer. You nod. You smile. You perform the role. You become the couple version of elevator music, soft, non-threatening, and entirely forgettable. One night, we went out to dinner. It was our anniversary. We sat across from each other at a table dressed in candlelight and linen napkins. She wore her favorite burgundy dress. I wore a button-up shirt she once said made my eyes look kinder. The waiter came and we both smiled, rehearsed, comfortable. We ordered. We sipped wine. We talked about the kids, the new restaurant down the street, her boss. Nothing dangerous, nothing real. And then it hit me. This was the same conversation we'd had last year, and the year before that. Like actors performing a script neither of us believed anymore. A marriage in syndication, reruns with no audience. There's a myth that communication is the key to everything. But that's only partly true. It's not just about words. It's about which words. It's not about talking more. It's about saying the hard things, the inconvenient things, the things that make your throat tighten and your palms sweat. We never talked about sex, at least not honestly. We didn't talk about the resentment that simmered when one of us felt more alone while together than we did apart. We didn't talk about the parts of ourselves we were afraid to show, the insecurity, the anger, the doubt. We were fluent in logistics, illiterate in intimacy. After the divorce, I spent months trying to figure out when it happened, when the connection snapped. But it wasn't one moment, it was hundreds. Tiny choices to avoid discomfort, to be polite instead of vulnerable, to protect ourselves instead of each other. I remember one night, late autumn, she came home late from work. I had made dinner. I was frustrated, though I didn't say it. She was exhausted, though she didn't show it. She sat down and asked, "How was your day?" I said, "Fine." She nodded, "Mine too." And we ate in silence. But in my mind, I was screaming, "Ask me again. I want to tell you. I want you to notice that I'm unraveling." But I didn't say that. I swallowed it with my food. She probably did the same. Disconnection doesn't feel dramatic. It feels numb. It's a slow erasure. First, you stop laughing together. Then you stop confiding. Then you stop caring that you don't. You become polite strangers with shared laundry. And when that happens, no amount of communication, no perfectly worded text, no couples retreat, no weekly check-in can save it, because you've already replaced honesty with habit. Looking back, I wish we had fought more. At least fighting means someone still believes the other person can hear them, that there's something left worth shouting about. But we didn't fight. We drifted. Like two boats tied loosely at the dock, slowly pulled apart by tides too quiet to notice until the rope snapped. After divorce, I learned something quietly brutal, that saying I'm fine when I'm not is a form of betrayal. That asking what's wrong and settling for nothing is a missed chance to truly connect. That pretending everything's okay is the most dangerous thing we do in long-term relationships. Now I talk differently, not louder, not more often, but braver. I say, I feel distant from you, and I don't know why. I need you to see me. I'm scared you'll stop loving me, and I don't know how to say it without sounding needy. It's not poetic, but it's honest. And honesty, I've learned, is the only true foundation for love. Divorce didn't teach me that communication is everything. It taught me that disconnection is the enemy of love. And disconnection happens when we stop speaking from the place that hurts. So now, when someone I love asks, "How are you?" I take a breath. I search for the real answer, and I try, even when it's uncomfortable, to tell the truth. Because connection isn't found in perfect conversations. It's found in courageous ones. We didn't fall out of love, we fell out of truth. Chapter 3, People leave long before they walk out the door. Literary style, introspective, poetic realism. Like a blend of Raymond Carver's restraint and Ocean Vuong's emotional depth. They say people leave in the night. That departure is sudden, loud, definitive, a slammed door, a suitcase, a whispered curse, a final goodbye. But in truth, most people leave long before the front door ever opens. They leave in pieces, a glance not returned, a hand not held, a moment of pain unspoken and unacknowledged. Love doesn't die like thunder, it dies like dust, slowly, invisibly, until one day you look around and realize you're choking on the quiet. I remember the first time she didn't wait up for me. I was late, working again. I walked into the house and found it still, dim, untouched by any sign of concern. She was already asleep or pretending to be. No light left on, no plate saved. No "Are you okay?" or "How was it?" Just silence. A year earlier, she would have been at the door, arms crossed, maybe annoyed, but present. She would have said something sharp and loving, like, "You work too much. I miss you, you idiot." But that night, nothing. And I knew, not in words, not in logic, but in the aching way my heart sank into my shoes. Leaving begins long before the bags are packed. It begins in the emotional exits, the ones nobody sees, when you stop sharing your small victories because you know they won't be celebrated. When you stop bringing up your fears because they'll only be minimized. When you walk into a room and your presence no longer changes the temperature. We still kissed, still had dinners, still functioned. But something was gone. Not loud, not even sad, just gone. She laughed at sitcoms, but not at my jokes. She asked how I slept, but not if I dreamed. She talked about her day in bullet points, not stories, and I played along. Because denial is easy when the alternative is devastation. Most people don't leave out of cruelty. They leave because they're exhausted. From trying, from hoping, from repeating the same unmet needs until even silence feels more dignified. So they begin constructing their exit quietly. They start exercising again, not for health, but for strength. They open a secret bank account, not for greed, but for survival. They withdraw affection, not to punish, but because giving love with no return begins to feel pathetic. I didn't see it at first, or maybe I did, and chose not to look too closely. Because when you love someone, you don't notice when their back is turning, not until it's fully turned. One morning, she looked at me over coffee and said flatly, "Do you think we're okay?" I panicked, not because I thought we weren't, but because by the time she asked, I realized she already knew the answer. That question wasn't a request for reassurance. It was a mirror, one she had the courage to hold up, and I no longer had the strength to look into. I think back now to all the moments that were actually exits, when she stopped saying "I love you" at the end of every call, when she began using "I" instead of "we" in her sentences, when she stopped asking me to come to bed. Those weren't mood swings. They were goodbyes in progress. People leave long before they walk out the door. And the greatest tragedy? You don't get to grieve them while they're still next to you. You grieve them after they've already stopped grieving you. You go on dates with someone who's already gone. You celebrate anniversaries with a ghost. And when they finally say the words, "I want out," you realize they've said it in 100 silent ways already. If I could go back, not to change the outcome, but to honor the truth, I would have asked, "When did you first start leaving me?" And then, "Why didn't I go after you?" But I didn't, because I thought love was stable. I thought people stayed unless something exploded. But now I know people leave in whispers, in fading eye contact, in texts that grow shorter, in long drives alone, pretending they're thinking, but really rehearsing their exit speech. These days, I notice the little things in people, the way they touch their partner's shoulder or forget to, the tone of their voice when they say goodnight, the way they reach or don't for someone's hand across the dinner table. Because that's where truth lives, in gestures, in absence, in the pauses between what we say and what we really mean. Divorce taught me this. Love isn't lost in a moment. It's lost in the accumulation of unattended moments, in all the doors that creaked open and we pretended not to hear, in all the "I'm fines" that were actually silent screams, in all the long, slow departures no one dared to interrupt. So if you're reading this and you feel it, that distance in your partner's breath, that pause before they say, "I love you," that way your presence no longer lights up their eyes. Don't wait for the suitcase. Ask, speak, beg for honesty if you must. Because not all departures are inevitable. But once someone's emotionally gone, they're halfway out the door already. She didn't leave when she walked out. She left when I stopped noticing she was fading. Chapter 4, Love Isn't Enough. And that's okay. We loved each other. I need you to know that. This isn't one of those stories where two people fall out of love and drift into silence. No, we held love in our hands like it was something holy. And for a while, we believed it was enough. Because every movie told us it would be. Every love song ended there. As long as we have love, we'll be okay. What no one tells you is that love is only the beginning, that it is the seed, not the tree, that it needs light, care, water, time, that love is not immune to neglect or exhaustion or trauma. And so, we loved each other. But we didn't know what to do with our love. The first time we said, "I love you," it was pouring rain. She stood at my front door, soaked from head to toe, her mascara smudged and eyes wild with laughter. We'd just run from the car after a failed picnic in the park. I handed her a towel. She looked at me and said it like a fact, not a question. "I love you." I said it back with no hesitation. And in that moment, I believed that if two people loved each other like that, effortlessly, joyfully, soaked in rain and possibilities, they'd be fine. But love doesn't build skills. It doesn't teach you how to communicate during conflict. It doesn't heal your childhood wounds. It doesn't pay the bills, or balance the power, or cook dinner on days you hate each other. Love can start a fire. But fires burn just as easily as they warm. We had differences that love couldn't fix. She was a planner. I was a dreamer. She needed structure. I needed space. She wanted a life with roots. I wanted one with wings. For a while we made it work, like dancers moving to music only we could hear, taking turns bending, compromising. But compromise, when done without clarity or balance, becomes quiet resentment. And resentment is a mold. It grows where light doesn't reach. We stopped fighting, not because we found peace, but because fighting felt useless. We'd have the same conversations on repeat, same problems, same pain. And afterward, we'd sit across from each other in the living room, not angry, just empty, like two boxers too bruised to keep swinging. "I love you," she said once in the middle of an argument, "but I don't like who we are together anymore." That was the moment I knew. Love was still present, but we were starving in a kitchen full of ingredients we didn't know how to cook. People think love is a solution, but sometimes love is simply a witness. A soft murmur saying, "I see you. I want better for you," even if better means walking away. After the divorce, I told myself I had failed love. But then I realized I hadn't failed love. I had outgrown a story that was never built to last. Because love is not a test you pass or fail. It's a lesson, sometimes beautiful, sometimes brutal, but always a mirror. Now I love differently. I don't chase fireworks. I chase consistency. I don't mistake passion for safety. I don't confuse feeling needed with being valued. And I ask better questions. Can we solve problems together? Do we know how to apologize? Are we compatible in rest, not just in chaos? Because love may light the match, but it's teamwork that builds the house. I wish someone had told me that you can love someone deeply and still be wrong for each other, that walking away can be an act of love, that heartbreak doesn't mean you were foolish, only human. Now, when I hear people say, "But we love each other, isn't that enough?" I smile gently and say, "It's a beautiful place to start, but don't stop there." Because love isn't magic. It's work. It's language. It's timing. It's healing. And sometimes it's letting go. Voice-over style closing. We didn't fail because we stopped loving. We failed because we stopped growing. And that doesn't make the love worthless. It just makes it real. Chapter 5. Compatibility. Chemistry. When the fire fades, will there still be warmth? There was a time I mistook fireworks for foundation. I used to think the spark between two people, that heart-racing, can't stop thinking about you, lose track of time kind of feeling, was the most important ingredient in love. When we met, that's exactly what it felt like. We collided, not met. She laughed like sunlight. I spoke like I'd finally found someone who wanted to hear me. Our hands fit like puzzle pieces we'd been missing. I thought, this is it. Because how could something that electric be wrong? But no one tells you that fire is designed to burn bright and then die. And when it does, what's left is not the thrill. It's the scaffolding. It's the structure. And if you didn't build that, you'll be left standing in ashes, wondering why the house collapsed. We had chemistry. We could finish each other's sentences, read each other's moods from across the room. We had nicknames and inside jokes. Sex was spontaneous and urgent. But when the real world came in, when her father got sick, when my job became unstable, when we disagreed about money or parenting or what it meant to take a break, our chemistry had nothing to say. We could flirt, but we couldn't negotiate. We could kiss, but we couldn't compromise. We were magnetic until we weren't. Compatibility is quieter. It's not the lightning. It's the lamp that stays on during the storm. Compatibility is remembering the other person's triggers and adjusting, being able to sit in silence and not be afraid, respecting how the other processes grief, stress, joy, wanting similar things, or at least wanting to want them together. We didn't have that. She was a morning person. I came alive after midnight. She craved security. I craved freedom. She processed everything out loud. I went silent when things got hard. We loved each other, but we constantly misread the map, each of us thinking the other was lost, never realizing we'd always been on different roads. I remember one day we were walking downtown. She stopped in front of a house, a modest one with a porch swing and flower beds. She said, This is what I want someday. And I smiled. But I knew someday was never in my bones. I was still chasing oceans. She wanted roots, and I foolishly thought love would make one of us change. It didn't. What it did was make us both resentful for needing what the other couldn't give. Chemistry is about who excites you. Compatibility is about who supports you. You can burn with someone, or you can build with someone. Sometimes, rarely, you can do both. But when forced to choose the person who brings you peace, who softens your sharp edges, not sharpens them, who makes the mundane meaningful, who sees you, not just the version of you under candlelight. After the divorce, I dated again. And I kept finding chemistry, but I had learned my lesson. One night I met someone who didn't make my heart race. She didn't flirt like my ex. She didn't challenge me in wild, thrilling ways. But she listened. She remembered how I took my coffee. She asked about my sister. She noticed when I got quiet and didn't fill the silence, just sat beside it. And for the first time I felt seen without performance, not because she sparked me, but because she held me. We think love should feel like a movie, but I've come to believe it should feel like a home, not always exciting, but always safe, not always loud, but always steady. If I could talk to my younger self, I'd say, don't fall in love with potential. Fall in love with patterns. Don't ask, do we have chemistry? Ask, can we face the boring days together? Don't look for butterflies. Look for alignment. Because life isn't made up of grand gestures. It's made of Tuesday nights, grocery runs, quiet grief, and how well you treat each other when you're tired. Chemistry may pull you into the story, but compatibility is what keeps you reading. And when the pages turn slowly, when the thrill dims, it's not passion that keeps you there, it's partnership. Final reflection, closing voiceover style. She was my spark, but sparks don't last, and someday when the fire fades, you'll ask yourself, did we build something under the heat, or did we only dance in it? Chapter 6, Resentment is the rust that destroys from within. It starts as a whisper, then it eats the walls. Resentment doesn't arrive like a hurricane. It comes in quietly. A missed thank you, a favor taken for granted, a decision made without asking. You don't notice it at first. You tell yourself, it's fine, it's small. You swallow it, like something bitter that will pass if you just keep chewing. But resentment is not swallowed. It settles. It builds up in corners, behind routines, underneath politeness, until one day you walk into your home, hear your partner's voice, and feel cold. You don't know why, but something in you recoils. That something is rust, and it's been growing for years. I used to think we were fine. We didn't fight much. We handled things like adults, bills, chores, social events, birthdays. We were a functioning partnership. But there was something rotten beneath the function. It wasn't dramatic. It was structural. I would cook dinner. She wouldn't say thank you. It was expected. Routine. I took the car for repairs. She said nothing, not out of malice, but because she assumed I would, and slowly I started keeping score, in silence. How many times have I done this without acknowledgement? Why am I always the one remembering the birthdays, the bills, the appointments? When was the last time she asked how I was really doing? And I never said it aloud, because saying it felt petty, because love shouldn't be transactional, because I didn't want to seem needy. But neediness unspoken doesn't disappear. It calcifies. Resentment is the byproduct of silence. And silence is so easy to justify in long-term love. You tell yourself, they're just tired. They didn't mean it. This isn't worth a fight. Maybe I'm overreacting. But what you don't realize is, every time you swallow your feelings, they settle in your gut, until your gut becomes heavy with unmet needs, until your kindness turns to obligation, until your giving becomes hollow, until love becomes duty. One night, she forgot something important, a small anniversary I cared about. She apologized, genuinely, but I snapped, not because of that night, but because of the 50 other nights I never spoke up about. The apology landed on a mountain of quiet bitterness I had been building, brick by unnoticed brick. She didn't understand why I was so angry, and honestly, neither did I. But it wasn't about that night. It was about every night I pretended I was fine when I wasn't. I used to think that expressing disappointment was dangerous, that it would scare her, push her away, make me look weak. But holding in resentment is like pouring acid into a container and hoping it never leaks. Eventually it will, and when it does, it burns everything it touches, even love. Resentment is a thief. It steals warmth. It steals curiosity. It steals sex slowly. First the passion, then the willingness, then the touch. You still sleep in the same bed, but your bodies are miles apart. You still say, I love you, but it feels like closing a door, not opening one. After we divorced, I found a note I'd written to myself but never sent to her. It said, please see me, not just what I do, not what I carry, but me. I am exhausted. I am loyal. I am disappearing. I cried reading it, not because of the sadness, but because I had been right there in that truth, and I had said nothing. Now I understand. Healthy relationships don't avoid resentment. They address it, early, awkwardly, and lovingly. They say, hey, that hurt. Can we talk about what just happened? I don't feel appreciated right now, even when it feels inconvenient, especially when it does. I don't fear anger anymore. I fear quiet resignation. I fear the shrug, the whatever, the slow withering of someone who no longer believes their voice will be heard. Because when that happens, you're no longer building love. You're managing silence, and silence over time is where resentment becomes rust, and rust always wins. Closing voiceover reflection. Resentment is not about what was done to you. It's about what you couldn't say. And when you finally learn to speak, it may already be too late. Chapter 7. Your childhood was in the room. 2. We weren't just two adults in a marriage. We were also two children trying not to be abandoned again. We thought it was just us in the marriage. Two adults trying to make a life. But it was never just us. It was also my 8-year-old self who learned to keep quiet when things got tense. It was her 10-year-old self who believed love had to be earned, with overachievement, with niceness, with perfection. It was the echo of our parents' arguments, the silence after the slamming doors, the subtle aching wounds we never thought would follow us into adulthood, but they did. They always do. I didn't realize it until after the divorce, when the house was quiet and I had no one to win with, no one to apologize to or wait for, just me. And that's when he showed up, the boy I used to be, the one who felt invisible at the dinner table, the one who learned to say yes to avoid conflict, the one who was praised for being so easy but never really known. He'd been there the whole time, answering on my behalf, choosing safety over honesty, choosing peace over truth. She had her own inner child too. I just didn't see her at the time. When she panicked over little things like a forgotten text or a delay in my reply, I saw it as overreaction, but now I understand. She was reliving abandonment, not mine, someone else's, from long ago. She wasn't asking, "Why didn't you text?" She was asking, "Am I worth remembering?" And I, blind to her pain, numb to my own, dismissed it. Not cruelly, just unknowingly. Because when two people don't know their own wounds, they end up accidentally pressing on each other's scars. We had fights that made no sense on the surface, over laundry, over dinner plans, over one of us being 5 minutes late. But what we were really saying was, "I don't feel important. I'm scared you'll stop loving me. I need you to see the version of me that no one else ever protected." But we didn't say that. We slammed doors. We went silent. We slept back to back. And every night, the children inside us, the ones we never spoke of, curled up a little tighter, hoping someone would finally say, "I see you. You're safe now." No one told me marriage was trauma in translation. That your childhood stories, even the ones you thought you left behind, would write entire chapters of your adult relationship. If you learn that love was conditional, you will chase approval. If you grew up fearing rejection, you will sabotage closeness before it hurts. If you were the fixer, you'll keep fixing until you break yourself. We think we're grown. We think we've healed just because time has passed. But wounds don't age out. They resurface, usually in the places where we love the deepest. Because love is where the mask slips, where vulnerability is allowed, and therefore where fear rushes in. After the divorce, I went to therapy, not to talk about us, but to talk about me. And in doing so, I met myself, not the adult version, but the younger one, the scared one, the neglected one, the one who needed to be loved without having to earn it. And when I finally held him, metaphorically, painfully, I realized I'd been asking my partner to do that for me all along, and so had she. Now I understand something that no one teaches. You're not just marrying a person. You're marrying their memories, their coping mechanisms, their fears dressed up as control, their needs hidden inside habits, and they're marrying yours. That's why awareness matters. That's why healing isn't optional, it's urgent. Because if you don't know the script your childhood wrote for you, you will perform it again and again, dragging your partner into scenes they never auditioned for. Voiceover style closing. I thought we broke up because of mismatched schedules, communication styles, and timing. But truthfully, we broke up because our unhealed pasts kept speaking louder than our present love. Chapter 8. Healing doesn't happen just because you're alone. Time alone isn't medicine. It's a mirror. What you do with it is what matters. After the divorce, everyone told me, "Now you'll finally heal." As if healing was the automatic reward for heartbreak. As if being alone meant becoming whole again, effortlessly, eventually. But here's the truth no one warned me about. Aloneness doesn't fix you. It just removes the noise. And when the noise is gone, all that's left is you, your patterns, your pain, your avoidance, your unfinished grief. At first, I mistook the quiet for healing. I filled my apartment with plants, journals, Spotify playlists about rebirth. I told people I was rediscovering myself. And in some ways I was. But healing isn't about scented candles and bubble baths. Healing is work. Messy, unflattering, often inconvenient. And alone, I had no one left to blame, no one to distract me from the mirror I kept avoiding. It was just me, and the version of myself I had postponed meeting for years. I realized I had built my identity around being needed, that I didn't know how to exist if no one was depending on me, that I kept filling roles, partner, provider, protector, but I had no idea who I was without a script. So I sat in the silence, and it hurt more than I expected. Some days I felt powerful. I walked alone through the city and didn't have to text anyone where I was. I cooked whatever I wanted. I went to sleep in a bed that finally fit just me. But other days, I stared at the empty side of the bed like it was proof I had failed at something sacred. Healing doesn't happen because you finally have time. It happens when you finally stop running from yourself. And let me tell you, I had been running for years, into other people, into achievements, into distraction, into the idea that if I just love someone enough, I won't have to face myself. But alone, there was no one left to rescue me from me. So I asked questions I'd avoided. Why do I people please until I resent the people I'm pleasing? Why do I confuse control with care? Why do I keep falling for people who don't know how to love me back? The answers didn't come fast. They came slowly. In dreams, in old journal entries, in uncomfortable therapy sessions, in tears I couldn't explain. But they came. I thought healing would feel like rising, but it felt like shedding the identities I had clung to, shedding the story that I was only worthy when chosen, shedding the belief that being alone meant being unwanted, because being alone isn't a punishment, it's an invitation to return, to rewire, to reclaim. You don't automatically heal in solitude. You heal when you learn to face the silence with kindness. You heal when you stop performing worthiness and start practicing truth. You heal when you stop dating replacements and start dating your own inner child. Healing didn't come to me like a wave. It came like weather, changing, returning, unpredictable. There are still days when the quiet hurts, when I want to call someone just to not feel so much, when the past knocks on my chest like an old song. But now I sit with it. I don't run. And that is healing. Voice over closing, reflection. I didn't become whole just because I became single. I became whole because I finally stopped outsourcing my healing and gave myself permission to do the messy, sacred work of meeting who I really am. Chapter 9. You don't just divorce a person, you divorce a future. The most painful part wasn't losing her. It was losing everything I thought we'd become. Divorce is often described as a breakup, the end of a relationship between two people. But the truth is, you don't just lose someone. You lose the entire life you imagined with them. You lose Sunday mornings that haven't happened yet. You lose the version of your child's graduation where both of you are in the front row smiling. You lose the someday trips, the shared retirement plans, the home with the olive tree you always said you'd plant. You don't just divorce a person. You divorce a future. And the mourning that comes after? It's not just for what was. It's for what will never be. I remember the way we used to talk about next year. Next year, we'll go to Italy. Next year, we'll finally redo the kitchen. Next year, maybe we'll try for another kid. Next year, things will get easier. Next year was always our parachute, a way to stay afloat when the present felt heavy. But divorce takes next year and sets it on fire. And all you're left with is now. And now is empty. Now is silent. Now has no shared calendar, no shared bed, no shared goals, just space and grief and the sound of your own breath as you try to believe this is still your life. I didn't cry the day we signed the papers. I was too tired, too relieved. But 2 months later, I broke down in the aisle of a grocery store because I saw a woman, mid-40s, graying hair, laughing with her husband over which brand of cereal to get. And I realized that was supposed to be us. Not the cereal, not the laughter, the years, the mundane years, the quiet years, the ordinary, soft, growing old together years. We had names picked out for dogs we never got. We had playlists for road trips we never took. We had arguments about baby names for children we never made. People think divorce is one big rupture, but it's actually a series of micro-deaths. Tiny funerals for imagined futures you have to bury alone. I found a note she wrote me, folded into a book I never finished. It said, "One day we'll laugh about all of this, you and me, old and soft and still a little wild." I read it 5 times before I put it away. I didn't cry, because some losses are too quiet for tears. They just sit in your chest like something left behind in an attic you never visit, but never throw away. We mourn people, yes, but we also mourn the version of ourselves we were with them, the stories we were trying to write together, the rituals that made life feel like ours, not just mine. I didn't just miss her. I missed the U.S. that was still unfolding. The life paused mid-sentence, and I had no idea how to finish it alone. But slowly, I learned something that saved me. You can grieve a future and still build a new one. You can light a candle for the life you lost and still open the window for light to come in. You can say goodbye to one dream without giving up on the idea of dreaming again. Now I take my coffee the way I like it. I travel alone. I plant herbs in a small garden box. No olive tree, but it's something. And sometimes, when the light hits a certain way in the late afternoon, I catch a glimpse of the life I thought I'd have, and I nod to it, not bitterly, not longingly, just softly, because that life mattered, even if it didn't last. Voiceover style closing. Divorce isn't just about losing a person. It's about learning to release a version of the future you once clung to and finding the courage to believe in a new one. Chapter 10. You end the marriage, but the lessons stay forever. The love ends, the learning doesn't. People assume divorce means failure, that it's a dead end, that it's the final period in a story you couldn't finish. But I don't see it that way anymore, because endings don't erase what came before. And not all endings are failures. Some are graduations. I left that marriage with no certificates, no medals, no applause. But I walked away with something harder to earn, wisdom. And though the love is gone, the lessons remain. Here's what I learned. 1. Love alone is never enough. You need respect. You need shared values. You need consistent effort, even on the unremarkable days. And sometimes, even that won't be enough, and that's okay. 2. Your silence won't save the relationship. Swallowing your feelings doesn't make you stronger. It makes you invisible. Speak up, gently, honestly, often. 3. You teach people how to treat you. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you write the rule book for how love is allowed to behave around you. I also learned that it's possible to lose someone and still be grateful they existed. I no longer need to villainize her to validate my pain. I don't need to rewrite history to survive it. She was beautiful and flawed and loving and lost, just like me. There are days I miss what we had, but I don't miss who I became trying to keep it alive. And that distinction between missing someone and missing who you were with them taught me more about love than any romantic poem ever could. Divorce taught me that grief isn't linear, that loneliness can be fertile ground, that you can rebuild slowly without rushing and still arrive. I've learned to sit with discomfort, apologize without defense, listen to my body when it says, "This isn't working." Let go before I rot inside what I'm clinging to. I no longer chase forever. I chase truth. I chase presence. I chase the kind of peace that doesn't require me to shrink to keep someone else close. Some nights, I still dream about us. Not the fights, not the final days, just the quiet middle. The way we used to drink tea in the winter. The way her hand found mine in a crowded room. The safety of we. I wake up with tears sometimes, but not regret, because the love was real, and the ending was right. Voiceover style reflection. The marriage ended, but I'm still carrying the tools it gave me to love better, to live more truthfully, to never again abandon myself in the name of closeness. The chapter closed, but the story didn't end. I did not fail. I learned.